brother, back at you with another talk, and yet again we've got John Bosnitch. John, how you doing?
Doing fine. You?
Pretty good. Welcome back. It's been a while. I've been hunting you down. We've had a few misfires, and then we've had some, weather warfare affecting Serbia with freak summer storms that basically didn't allow us to hook up. I just want to here on the record, thank you for taking so much time to tell us about your story. The subscribers have loved everything that you've shared with us so far, and we can't wait to hear a bit more about you. I just want to take this moment to first of all thank one of the subscribers. Citizen 1001 is his online thing, where he said Working Brother Talks have become a family show where he calls his children in and they watch this for family entertainment. So not only is this a comedy show, this is also a family comedy show now. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy the humor. But before we get into any of the details that John has prepared for us and any of the exclusive photos, I just want to clue people in as to the movie called The Weight of Chains. Težina Lanaca. It's by Boris Malagurski. It's a 2010 movie. There's subsequent part 2 and 3 and 4, I think. But the point is, this is where I first came across John Bosnitch with this statement.
Journalists come to Serbia and say, why are you Serbs so darn crazy that you celebrate a battle that you lost? You talk about the Battle of Kosovo, and you're always talking about a battle, how great it was, that you fought to the death, but you lost. Aren't you guys masochistic? Isn't there something wrong with you? And I said, ever heard of the Alamo? Remember the Alamo? Ever heard of Masada? In which the Jews defended to the death and then committed suicide rather than to be captured?
For standing up against the Turks, Sir.
So, that's Boris Malagurski's take on let's say, falling apart of Yugoslavia and the weight of change that the Serbian people have had to bear since then. Why don't you give us a bit of your take? Go on.
Just interject right there.
Yeah.
How did that come about? So...
the weight of chains, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, this story that we told in The Weight of Chains. So... It was 2007, and I was working in Washington. I had moved from Japan to...
Are you working where? We had a little glitch here. I couldn't hear you properly.
I was working in Washington.
Oh, in Washington. All right. So this is picking up where we left off in the last episode, basically, when you were... outing the CIA within the Serbian Congress in Washington, right?
Unity Congress, yeah.
Serbian Unity Congress.
Right. So I was, I had been working in Tokyo, and after I decided to defend Bobby Fischer, of course, my ability to stay in Tokyo and especially to work as an advisor for the government that I was actually fighting was non-existent. And so I had to make a move. And
this is you in Tokyo, one of the pictures that you wanted me to share for 3 episodes back, but we never got around to it. Let's get to this photo first before we move on from Japan.
The top of the world at that time. That was the strongest economy in the world. And you'll see in the background there, you'll see the Tokyo Tower in orange.
Yeah.
So we were above the Tokyo Tower at the top of the Roppongi Hills complex, which had just been built, and that's Mr. Mori there in the gray suit, and next to Mr. Mori with the red tie is Mr. Raymond, who was the right-hand man of Vladimir Putin at that time. That's 2003. And I was at that meeting as a representative, unofficial representative of the Japanese government, because the Japanese government couldn't officially be entering into any kind of dealings with the Russian government without American permission, because Japan is, like Canada, an American military protectorate, a colony. So all around us there is the extended Russian delegation led by Mr. Raymond next to Mr. Mori, and Mr. Mori was effectively, without a political aspect, he was the Mr. Donald Trump of Japan, who had built across Japan a series of towers like Trump Towers across America. He had built Mori Towers, and there were Mori Towers number 1, Mori Tower number 20, Mori Tower, and so on, all across Japan. And that meeting was the meeting that I pulled together when the Japanese answered 72 hours before they were going to arrive in Tokyo to confirm a 1-year standing invitation for them to come to Japan. And I had to find a venue. So I went to see Mr. Mori, the man in the gray suit, and without his invitation. I called him from the Nikkei headquarters and I told him, Mr. Mori.
We covered that in one of the other talks. But this is basically the culmination. This is the proof that so many people in the comment sections are amazed by, that you have unbelievable stories and then you pull out the receipts, basically. That's
so
Japan.
This was the Japan meeting that led to a promise to build a Shinkansen bullet train across Asia, from Japan, across Asia, through Romania to Serbia, and down to the Montenegrin seacoast at Bar. And our target was to eventually be able to do that trip in 24 hours, which would require, obviously, a maglev train running at something like 600 kilometers per hour.
I've got another little short clip of you in Japan that I came across today. This is AP, so like credit goes to AP. This should be public property.
I don't understand what's going on.
So this is you with the lawyer that you were mentioning earlier, saying that you're the only one who won't understand what's going on at the proceedings, which I think is hilarious. I like this is an incredible opportunity to get to learn all these little details and intricacies from you, and to share it. Tell us more about what happened in Washington once you went back.
Well, after getting Fisher safely out of Japan and into asylum in Iceland, then. Obviously, I could no longer work for the Japanese Prime Minister's office because I had sued the Prime Minister. And the American Embassy immediately put the pressure on all of my consulting clients. I had about several dozen Japanese companies for which I did a variety of different functions, either corporate communications or branding or marketing advice, or just counseling on how to communicate with Western clients and so on.
All of them basically, except Kikkoman gave you the "we're letting you go" treatment.
Well, they were given the ultimatum by the U.S. Embassy that either work with Bosnitch or you lose your business in America, and they were literally blackmailing everybody. And so, as a good loyal corporate consultant, I advised all of my clients that the best decision for their company was to terminate their relationship with me, and so that was it. But Kikkoman's president and CEO said, well, then the duty falls to us to represent the dignity and honor of Japan. And Mr. Bosnitch, whatever you were earning from all your other companies, you can stay here and work for us, and we'll pay you that salary. And I said, that's an awful lot of money for the small amount of work I do for you. He said, there's no price associated with the honor of Japan. And I respectfully declined that. I did not want to put his company in that position, and I decided that it was now time for me to go to the source of the problem, and that was Washington, D.C. So I remember my ex-wife asking me, well, how are you going to get a job there? And I said, well, there's a meeting, the annual meeting of the Serbian Unity Congress, and it's being held, I think it was being held in Las Vegas. So I'm going to fly to Las Vegas tomorrow, and I'm going to get on the board, and I'm going to get in the conference, and I'm going to get the microphone, and I did, and people thought I would be a good spokesman, and so then I got offered the job.
But we covered all of that. We covered all of that until you basically even outed some CIA operatives who were inside the Serbian Congress who were against,
Probably inside the Serbian Unity Congress, but inside our church.
Okay.
The priest and the deacon at our church in Washington also were being paid by the CIA. Mm-hmm. And they admitted it. They said, we're just doing translation services. And I said, yeah, I understand that, but I don't understand how you can keep your oath to the church and to God and work for the CIA, which we all know is a criminal organization. So that was the end of our church going in Washington, and it was also the end of my association with the Serbian Unity Congress. And I then was preparing to leave, and I think I mentioned to you that a very influential Serb in America came and offered me a new job.
No, I don't think we discussed that.
Oh, okay. So I'm on my last day of work at the Serbian Unity Congress, and under the terms of the treaty NAFTA, North American Free Trade Association, North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, I had to leave the United States within 24 hours of losing my employment with the Serbian Unity Congress. And on the afternoon of the last day, a distinguished-looking gentleman comes to my office and knocks on the door, and he's looking for John Bosnitch. And I said, yes, I am John Bosnitch, but I can't really help you because I no longer work here. This is my last day. I'm just cleaning my papers up, and I'm heading out. And he goes, actually, I just wanted to talk to you about that. And I said, well, I have to have a status as a management consultant with a particular visa to stay in the United States. And he goes, I think we can arrange that. And I said, we? He goes, yeah, come with me. So we got in his big Cadillac Escalade Jeep. And he drove me all around Washington, and he said, we did that, and we did this, and we did that. And he showed me the obelisk statue that they brought from Egypt. And then he showed me the Masonic symbols all around Washington. And I said, I take it you're a Freemason. And he goes, yes, I am. In fact, I'm a 33rd degree Grand Mason of the Scottish Rite, and I'll take you to the temple. And he drove me to the temple.
John's stories, these crazy stories that you imagine in your mind, have nothing to do with reality. keep going, John.
You can ask him. Dave Vujic, he's a very well-known Serb in Washington. He's a well-known Freemason and is extremely active. He worked on the Apollo space project to get to the moon. He was a critical player in that. He was a critical player in the building of the B-1 bomber. He was and I still think he is a consultant to the top military-industrial companies in America. So there's nothing here.
When was this taking place?
2007.
2007. Yep. Okay, so this is long after you were doing your journalism stint in Bosnia and the former Yugoslavia. Because I wanted to touch upon that. I wanted to touch upon that in some kind of chronological order.
Okay. Yeah. You could
we touched on the weight of chains, and this is you in where is this? In Belgrade?
That's here in Belgrade, in New Belgrade, at my friend Boško Gajic's house. Boško is standing in the middle with the white shirt and the jeans. And then I'm next to him with my journalist vest, and next to me is an editor from Jungewelt, which is the former East German communist youth newspaper. And his name is Hajo Kalke. He actually married a Serbian woman, moved to Serbia, but at this time we had just met. And on the other side of Boško Gajic is my longtime journalistic partner, Ayori Sakamoto, with the plaid shirt, and one more Japanese fellow who was with us only for a very short time, and I actually forgot his name now. But the four on my left-hand side of the photo, Hajo Kalke, myself, and Boško Gajic and Ayori Sakamoto, we worked together for some period of years, and Hajo Kalke is still here, and he's still an activist on Serbian causes, even though he doesn't have a drop of Serbian blood. He's a bigger Serbian patriot than most of the Serbs I've met since I've been in Belgrade. So this is just before we went on a reporting mission across Bosnia, in which we were arrested by the Serbian police on the orders of President Karadzic's daughter, who insisted that we pay her a 300 euro fee to report in the Republika Srpska, which I refused to do. I said, journalists
probably.
don't. Yeah, it may have been Deutschmarks. That's correct. It would have been Deutschmarks. I just refused to do it. And she said that we had to
as one with Serbian blood does, just
right.
refuses. Because yes, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, we're not. Independent journalist is not paying a fee to any news registration body in their report. We're not doing that. We're not taking her translator, and we're not going in her car. None of the above. We rented our own car. We got our own translator from Tanjug, a Serb from Tanjug, and we drove right straight down from Grbavica into the center of Sarajevo, when the whole world was telling us that Sarajevo was surrounded by the evil Serbs, and that the Serbs had a blockade on, which was a complete lie, because the Serbs were in the center of Sarajevo. They were in the area called Grbavica, which was the geographical dead center of Sarajevo, and they were surrounded by the Muslim forces, and then the Muslim forces were surrounded once again by a broader Serbian surrounding force. So the center of Sarajevo was Serbian, and I went down there and I shot photos down there and I shot video down there. And of course, that was completely censored by the Western lying mainstream media. And during my time down there, I met the key reporters from the Washington Post. At that time, that was John Pomfret. And I met Julian Borger from The Guardian, both of whom were lying reporters who were just pumping out anti-Serb propaganda for their media, who had actually written their stories for them before they went in the field. And so all they had to do was come and do what's called local color, which means find a local person, interview him, add his or her name, and say, I spoke to Branko so-and-so, and he confirmed this and that. And that's how the criminal, lying, anti-Serbian propaganda picture was sown by these propagandists, professional propagandists. They weren't anything else. They were cleared with the government intelligence services in England and America. John Pomfret was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, which is, of course, the Pulitzer Prize is just given out by the editorial boards of the Washington Post and the New York Times, so they always win it. They always give it to themselves. And there was also one other lying mainstream media reporter, Tim Judah, who his name is reminiscent of Judas, the betrayer of Jesus Christ. And Tim Judah later wrote a book, I've forgotten the title of his book, in which he slandered the Serbian people and Serbian history and wrote a completely anti-Serbian history of the Balkans and of the war. So those are the kinds of journalists that I met. I met them first at the press center in Belgrade, where most of the fixers were anti-government bilingual speakers of English and Serbian who did whatever they were told by their foreign journalists to blacken the Serbian name. I'm embarrassed to say that they were Serbs, and I found it very, very strange to be a Serb who at that time did not speak a single word of Serbian. Nothing. I spoke no Serbian, and to meet Serbs who my father had taught me were the bravest of all nations, and all of them were betraying their nation, and all of them were telling lies against their own people in order to get 50 or 100 Deutschmarks a day as fixers, and they really did. They fixed the story for the Western.
To put in
lying
perspective, in those during those times, a normal monthly salary in parts of falling apart Yugoslavia, also known as Serbia, and other former republics were like 50 euros or 50 Deutschmarks a month, basically.
Yeah, 50 to 100 Deutschmarks a month was a full-time salary
for a doctor or somebody of that sort. Yeah,
these guys were getting this for a day, for one day.
So money. What can I say?
Money will buy you almost anything, and unfortunately, it would buy you the lying testimony of Serbs who were willing to sell out their own nation.
Yeah,
that's pity, and it tells you that most people, almost everybody, is subject to human nature, and human nature is unfortunately a split between idealism and thoughts and ideas and materialism. And in times of war, in times of desperation, the materialism side becomes the dominant side. And people will sell their souls. They'll sell their mother. They'll sell their brother. They'll sell their sister. They'll sell anything. So
there's all kinds.
I was deeply embarrassed by that as a Serb, and I thought I had to stay longer than I'd intended. I had planned to come to Serbia. I came here in May of 1994 for the World Journalist Conference that was hosted by the Serbian government and by Tanjug, to give journalists from all around the world a chance to actually see the situation in the former Yugoslavia, which then at that time consisted of Serbia, Montenegro, and Macedonia. And Bosnia was in the process of declaring independence and separating, and it was still contested because Republika Srpska did not want to separate, so we already had a split Bosnia. And Croatia had declared independence and left, and Slovenia had declared independence and left, and it was basically Serbia and Montenegro. So that group of 4 reporters that you saw, we went across Bosnia, and we reported on what we were seeing. And at the same time, when we came back from that reporting mission, I was offered employment by both Tanjug and by RTS, Radio Television Serbia. So I was working in the Tanjug World News Service English section, and I was functioning as the chief English editor there. And I was teaching the staff how you had to write a news story in the non-communist way, which means you had to have a starting section of the news story which would say who, what, when, where, how, and why, and then it would expand towards the bottom of the story, instead of just telling what was kind of a once upon a time story in the former communist narrative style, which was kind of, we don't have to defend the facts, we just have to say what happened. Yeah. So that's what I was doing at Tanjug, and my main mission at Tanjug was to use our limited number of reporters in the field to get them to go out and check the lying mainstream media stories of the day. Because every single day, the day would start with a lie from AP or from Reuters, where Christian Amanpour or Julian Borger or Tim Judah or John Pomfret would tell a lie, literally tell a lie, and try to pump that lie up to be the mainstream media's main story of the day, which would be cycled through AP and Reuters. And so that's what I did. I read their news story of the day, and I either tried to get to the story myself, or I tried to get a reporter of ours who was nearby to go there and prove that it was a lie. And if I was lucky, I would get to a story where the AP reporter or the BBC reporter was still in the vicinity, and I would report with them in the background in my picture, but I would use a wide-angle lens showing the whole picture and proving that what they were saying was a lie, while they would be doing a stand-up with their limited lens showing that lie that they were trying to portray. I did that a few times, and then they got really, really angry because I was proving day after day that they were actually manufacturing the news. They were creating a lie, creating a false narrative, creating a false witness, and then shooting video to make, actually make comedy. This is your comedy show? Well, the comedy was that I would be standing there and I would be looking at what they were doing, and I would laugh. I just had to laugh because I couldn't believe that the educated, upper class, university educated, PhD and master degree holders in the West were swallowing these lies. And they were, and they did. And I realized that, in fact, the only way to fight the lies was to do it full time. So then I went to work at Tanyug, and I went to work at RTS, or RTS, Radio Television Serbia, and I tried to produce news every single day refuting the claims. And when I could, I would go to Bosnia, to a place where there had been a massacre, a so-called massacre, or I would go to Bosnia where they said the Serbs had killed people with artillery, and I would find the fragments of the landmine that the Bosnian Muslim military would drop on their own people, and videotape where the landmine had been, and find local witnesses and show these facts to the public. Of course, nothing that I did could get in the Western mainstream media, but I did get it on Japanese television. And then Japanese television got repeated by Japanese print media, where I had already been working in Japan. And so the Japanese print media managed to have a news sharing agreement with the New York Times. And then I was able to get the news that we shot in Bosnia pumped over to the Japanese media, to the Yomiuri, where I had worked. And then the Yomiuri was automatically reprinted in the pages of the New York Times. And so I was actually able to negate the New York Times lies in their own pages by digitally bouncing the news to the Yomiuri. And then, of course, the Yomiuri cut me off, and I lost my job at the Yomiuri Shimbun, which was then the world's largest newspaper. And they took me off the news beat and put me on the finance beat. And on the finance beat, I was able to once again find stories that were manufactured and fabricated about the war in the Balkans. And they cut me off of the finance beat and put me only on the Japanese news beat. And so I was hired by the Nikkei, which was the Japanese number one Japanese newspaper, and it was from the Nikkei that I was sent to make a deal with Russia. The Nikkei was a semi-governmental connection. The Nikkei is a private, 100% private newspaper, but it has such a big influence that it can change the government of Japan. And so I got the Nikkei to send to Russia. And with the Nikkei behind me, I went to Russia and I proposed a conference in Russia to follow up on the conference that you had seen, to follow up on the conference that we had held earlier, and to arrange to first build the world's biggest pipeline. I think I gave you a photo of that pipeline. It's called the ESPO, the Eastern Siberian Pacific Ocean Pipeline. And the ESPO pipeline is the longest pipeline in the world. And my meetings with the Japanese and the Russians led to the signing of the ESPO construction contract, which was worth about $4.7 billion starting and ended up being a $9 billion project. And that is the pipeline that kept the power turned on in Japan when the Fukushima reactor melted down. And all of the nuclear reactors in Japan had to be turned off. So the only way that the Japanese industrial machine was able to function was through the pipeline that I had managed to negotiate with the Russians to bring gas to Japan, and the gas was then burned to generate electricity. And so that put me in a super influential position in Japan. The Japanese simply couldn't understand it. They couldn't believe it. They said, how are you going to do this? I said, I'm just going to fly to Moscow. And they said, how? I said, I'm going to get on the airplane.
That was part two. That was part two, if I remember correctly, of our discussions.
I'm just going to get on the airplane and I'm going to go to the foreign ministry of Russia and I'm going to make a deal.
John, I'm looking at my notes here.
Yeah.
I want you to round off the Mason story, but we also have to get into NATO. We have to get into Kosovo and how it relates to your experience in Yugoslavia and Bosnia, and generally what it means to the Serbian people and the cultural heritage. And I think that maybe ties into the Malagurski story, if I'm not maybe mistaken, and your statements about Ukraine and NATO. But we've already been going for 32 minutes, so I'm gonna call this.
I'll try and focus myself and put the crosshairs.
We'll call this an episode. Just as a joke, I want to play this in the background. This is you at a party. It was left as a comment on one of the previous episodes. So people who think that John is serious and too serious maybe and doesn't know how to party, they don't know that he's been partying for a long time.
That's me in 1981 when I was the student union president at the University of New Brunswick. Yeah, I think you can zoom right in on my face there. I think you've got enough detail that you can actually see my face there. That's a 21-year-old John Bosnitch, student union president, soaking wet at a punk new wave party in the student union building, which the students of the University of New Brunswick built, multi-million-dollar building. And since we built it, we ran it, and we brought the deepest underground acts across all of North America and Europe to play at this relatively small university, 10,000 students. And of course, we had the mainstream rock and roll or country western or whatever it was that the mainstream music was on one floor of the student union building where you could accommodate 700 people. And then we had the alternative music section where you could accommodate 500 people. And of course, I was always into the alt music because it was better and it was underground and it was more modern. And that was me dancing at one of the parties there. And actually, if you can get to YouTube from your computer, you can get to...
Not in this episode. Not in this episode. It'll be in the next part. Watch me do this. Watch me do this, John. Everybody, thank you for suggesting for me to get a Buy Me a Coffee account. Now you can support me on Buy Me a Coffee, link in the description. Everybody who stuck around to the end, thank you for sticking around. John, thank you for being here. Let's have you dancing in the background as we pull this out. This is excellent. Everyone, have a good one. We'll be back really soon.